Hey, Clemson family, the Tigers will put their home winning streak on the line Saturday against the team with the longest such streak in NCAA history, the Miami Hurricanes.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Let's see if the Tigers can build some momentum off that solid win over Louisville and keep it going against Miami, and then maybe next week into the South Carolina game.
I'm Bill Zimmerman. Sounds good to me. Welcome to episode 42 of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. A lot of you are checking us out at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. We're glad you're here. We want to be your source for analysis of the Tigers in 2022. All our episodes are on our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. You can also follow us on social media at Clemson Kickoff on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a quick subscribe here on YouTube. We can keep you up to date whenever you listen, and a like doesn't hurt either. So a little bit of a Jekyll-and-Hyde team this year from Miami. Even before heralded starting quarterback Tyler Van Dyke, who finished the season so strong last year, suffered an injury this year that has kept him out of several games. Miami struggled early in week 2 when they played Southern Miss before they pulled away for a significant win. They lost by 1 score to Texas A&M. They lost by merely a field goal to North Carolina, needed overtime to edge Virginia. They'd been blown out by Duke and Florida State. And last week, they picked off Georgia Tech quarterbacks 4 times in a blowout win. I just don't know what we're going to see this week out of them.
You go into that game last week, living here in Georgia, I thought there's a good chance that Georgia Tech wins that game. And Miami dominated start to finish for the most part. So that one surprised me just because of what we had seen from Miami throughout the season. Like you said, kind of up and down and up and down. And I thought Georgia Tech had a chance, but really it didn't. Miami controlled that game. A little bit of change at quarterback for the Hurricanes last week, and we'll see how that goes in this game. Who plays quarterback for Miami is a big question, I think, going into the weekend, and that'll be a big piece to the puzzle for the Clemson defense.
Well, if Van Dyke plays, he's got 1,700 yards passing this season with a 63.7% completion percentage, 10 TDs against 4 interceptions. Jake Garcia has played some, but Ja'Cory Brown emerged as a dual threat last week against Tech, 173 yards passing, 42 yards rushing. The numbers just aren't gaudy. Top receiving target is tight end Will Mallory, 393 yards and 2 TDs. The leading wide receiver is Colby Young with 351 yards and 5 TDs. Remember Frank Ladson, he's 4th on the team, 298 yards, just 1 touchdown. Don't know if he's cured the drops yet. And then the top running back for the Canes is Henry Parris Jr., 569 yards and 4 TDs. Maybe this team's struggling a little bit to adapt to new offensive coordinator Josh Gattis.
Probably, and the quarterback play has been really inconsistent. Van Dyke's been in and out of the lineup a little bit, and it takes time to adjust to a new coaching staff. That was one of the reasons I thought Miami wasn't going to be a challenger to win the division and play for the ACC championship. And we heard, so much talk about Miami and I just felt like it was going to take a little bit of time. And that's what it looks like. I think this is a team that's in a transition period, and that's okay with a new coaching staff. I do think Miami's headed in the right direction. I think they've got the right coach. I love Gattis as an offensive play caller. Kevin Steele's the defense coordinator. We'll see how that works out. But I do like the coaching staff. I just felt like they were a couple of years away based on the talent on the roster. There's talent at the skill positions, I think, and there's some talent here and there, but there's some struggles on these offensive defensive lines for this team, and I thought that would catch up to them this season.
It's a very talent-rich team. They've been recruiting fairly well. They're struggling to adapt. They definitely did not emerge even close to a Coastal Conference champion contender, as I had predicted. Own it right off the bat. You would hope that Kevin Steele, for Miami's sake, has at least taught them to tackle the way he taught people to tackle very quickly. His first year at Clemson, that had been a problem. He cleaned that up in a hurry. Leading sack man for them is Akeem Mesidor, a transfer out of West Virginia. Came in this year. Linebacker Corey Flagg Jr. leads the team with 54 tackles. Defensive back Cameron Kinchin leads with 6 INTs on the year, but 3 of those were last week against Georgia Tech in a single game. So maybe they're a little bit like Louisville. You hope they're as undersized as Louisville and can be out physicaled, but they do have that aggressiveness, that edge, that desire to take the ball away, create turnovers, and that could have created a problem for Clemson against Louisville as it did against Notre Dame and Syracuse. So Tigers are going to have to protect the ball this week.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a big piece to this team, I think. When this group doesn't turn the ball over, we've seen it have some success moving the ball. But the turnovers have jumped up and bit it the last 3 weeks. And, you and I were texting last week after the game, and you said it's a better game. And then, of course, Mr. Negative says, yeah, stop turning the ball over. And, the turnovers are an issue. They're a problem, and they've got to get that cleaned up. And look, they won last week with the turnovers. They can win this week. They could probably win next week with some turnovers. But if you want to be the team you think you can be, you can't have those kinds of issues. So let's hope that they've just got that cleaned up. And it's, Dabo said those things kind of come in waves at times. And sometimes you don't see them coming, even though you practice all the ways to keep them from happening, and they just happen. So let's hope that they've gotten that out of their system a little bit and they can finish strong here without some turnovers.
It'll be interesting to see how Dabo Swinney splits up the carries along with Brendan Streeter between Will Shipley and Phil Mafah. Mafah really looked good last week. And I'll tell you one thing I didn't mention in that Louisville episode was just how the leg drive seemed different for Mafah. And it seems like at some point in Wayne Gallman's career, he sort of developed that ability. You saw that, what does Swinney like to say? They flipped the switch, right? Well, Gallman figured out how to keep his legs turning, keep his legs driving. I'm not just talking about that rugby scrum play, but there were a couple of open field plays where he was able to surge for extra yards after contact. In fact, Pro Football Focus said that Mafah had more yards after contact than net yards rushing, which also tells you a lot about the Clemson offense right now, perhaps. Shipley, however, is a leader on this team. He's still the king of tough yards, if you ask me, technique aside. But can he protect the football? DJ Uiagalelei, can he make the right reads? Can he do the things that are going to keep the football in Clemson's possession while driving this team down the field? How are they going to spread the defense wide, stretch it long, and find the places to exploit for yardage safely and maintain drives and keep the chains moving?
That's a key. And look, the thing with Shipley is confusing and a little concerning because he does run so hard, but he hasn't had problems dropping the ball or putting the ball on the ground until the last few weeks. And even last week, he did have the fumble at the end that they lost, but there was the one that earlier in the game that could have been a big-time momentum changer. But luckily, Joe Ngata jumped on the fumble and kept the ball in Clemson's possession. So, look, I'm all for running hard. I'm all for fighting for extra yards, but you have to take care of the ball. You have to protect the ball at all costs. And make sure those things don't happen. And if they do that, if they don't turn the ball over and they're not throwing interceptions and fumbles, I think they can win this game pretty handily. I like what we saw from the defense. It felt like the defense took a big step forward last week. And look, just don't turn the ball over and put the team in a bad spot.
You kind of wonder what the mentality is going to be in this game where maybe there's nothing at stake officially as far as end of season, postseason, anything like that. So it was interesting to hear Swinney surface some playoff talk. Maybe that's an attempt on his part to motivate this team, which at times has shown a lack of urgency during the season.
Well, yeah, if you can't have urgency now, when are you going to have it, right? You got 2 games left in your season, a third coming up in the ACC championship game, and then a fourth in the bowl game, whatever that is. A lot of these guys, this is going to be the last run for them, these seniors. Saturday, senior day. And we know what that means for these players. And as they finish up their career, they should want to go out on a high note. They should be focused, and they should be fired up and ready to play. I'll be shocked if they're not. I mean, this team and this program typically, especially the last decade, senior day, they've played pretty well for the most part. So I'll be surprised if they don't play well on Saturday.
Be sure to subscribe to us on youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Give us a like while you're there if you can. That's the easiest way for us to keep this a free podcast, which is what we're committed to doing. There's a few other things to watch in the coming days. A couple of possible football recruiting commitments, one for 2024, one for 2023. Men's soccer will make their debut in the NCAA tournament after their first round bye. They'll learn their opponent tonight as we record this. And then men's basketball plays Friday, trying to build on their 2-1 record, while the women are trying to stay undefeated.
I can't wait to see the soccer team. This soccer team, I know it was an up and down year, guys in and out of the lineup, injuries, all those kinds of things. But this group, when it's focused, is one of the best in the country. And we saw that through the first few rounds of the ACC tournament. I think they've got a special run in them if they can just get everything lined up and going in the right direction. Basketball, I'm a little worried about the basketball program, the start of the season. I know PJ Halls didn't play the first game. He came in the South Carolina game, and they lost that game. Really disappointed in that loss. I think that's a game that they should have won and very easily could have won. They just did not play well offensively. They got the win against USC Upstate, but Bill, they didn't do much in that game to make you think, okay, this team is headed in the right direction. I know it's early in the season, but the defense in the second half of that game was really, really poor and let USC Upstate hang around. And it was a lot like the Citadel game where, look, you're playing a team that you should be able to beat handily at home, and they really had to fight hard to get those wins. So we'll see what they do Friday night against Bellarmine. That team beat Louisville already at Louisville, so that's not going to be a walk in the park. And then we'll start kind of getting into the season a little bit more.
Check out our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com, for kickoff times of the next 3 scheduled games. And then after that Miami game, we'll be sure to let you know if they got either of those commits or both, hopefully. Well, we are glad you found us, Clemson family. And until that next episode after the Hurricanes game, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley.